So tell us what is this should agenda that you want to advance?
Okay, so this should agenda. Okay, so there's people in poverty, they can't afford private sector education. So you want those millions of people, instead of joining the workforce. And again, I'm not advocating for fucking liberal sex lesbian
Why
sex
would they?
dance or
Why
whatever.
would they
But I'm
not join
saying
the
that if we
workforce?
have
They're in poor poverty and
Yeah,
populated
there,
areas
there, there are
because
plenty.
school choice
There are
doesn't
plenty.
exist.
There are plenty of poor people who go out there and they find jobs, and then and they look around to get training in certain areas on the job. Okay, you see, you're coming up with the scenario. You see, you've got the. You see, I'm just asking you, what's your worldview that says that we should help the poor? Don't you believe in survival of the fittest?
I thought you were a Christian, Darth.
Yeah, I am a Christian, but what I'm saying is, if he's going to advance these goal agendas or shoulds, it's going to have to be from his worldview.
Well, if you want a hierarchy, if we're talking about hierarchies, it's what if
Do
there's
you
a poor
believe?
person?
Do you believe in evolution, sir? Do you believe
Yeah,
in survival
wait,
of the
no.
fittest?
You're
Then
advocating for a hierarchy.
what's all this talk about helping poor people? Because you see, they're poor because
Yeah,
of their
I'm gonna tell you.
because of their
This is a
neurological
money
reproduction,
hierarchy.
sir.
Do you think poor people are
Wait,
gonna die if they don't
let
go
me
to
talk.
school?
Can I talk? Can I talk?
Okay, guys, one at a time.
You're
Seriously.
Oh my god, dude! Listen, this is a money hierarchy. Okay, if
So
you want a
what?
meritocratic hierarchy,
So
if you
what?
want a merit hierarchy,
Evolution, baby.
you're gonna make the what if I'm smart and I'm born poor
You're
and I'm circle
misusing
jerking
the
myself?
concept.
'Cause I'm
Yeah,
poor?
Your parents were dumb. Your parents were dumb.
Listen. Whatever their demarcations or divisions they are, this is an evolutionary descent. You believe in evolution, don't
You're
you?
misusing the
Yeah, I
concept.
believe in evolution.
No, I'm not misusing the concept, because you see, evolution determines each new generation. Don't ever talk me. Each generation's brain states and neurology is the product of ongoing evolution. And so if somebody's poor, okay, it's because either their neurological condition or their ancestry's neurology. Okay,
What if I immigrated? What if I immigrated? What if I'm a
doesn't matter that it's
Asian?
in.
That's
Okay,
not true.
listen. Do you believe human beings are just simply intelligent animals? IDK.
It depends on to
Sir,
other human
do you
beings.
believe in
Yes,
special creation or do you believe in evolution?
I believe in evolution.
Good. Then when you're talking about the poor and compassion, your brain just happened to evolve that way. There's no truth or falsity or good or bad in what you think. You just happen to evolve that way. And people who disagree with you about helping the poor or whether someone should or should not help the poor, they just happen to evolve that way too.
Wait, so
Yeah,
you're
you
saying
kind of
every
shoot
poor
yourself
person
in the foot with that.
is
Listen,
there
when
because of
when
himself?
look, when you start espousing making value judgments about how other people should be treated, you're doing so from an evolutionary perspective. You only think that way because you evolved to think that way. And if somebody else agrees with you, they just happen to evolve that way. And people who fundamentally disagree with you, they evolved not to think that way. So there's no right or wrong, good or bad. Your value judgments are an illusion of evolutionary descent.
Well, relative
All right,
to
but
certain things, there would be.
I'm not talking about the morality. I'm talking about the efficiency of what it grants. If you
Sir,
have
when you're dealing with
the issue is not morality. The issue is that you're making value judgments. Whenever you say good, better, worse, or bad, these are value statements. Your brain states evolved to exude those value statements. And those who agree with you have convergent evolution. And those who don't agree with you evolved neurologically not to think that way. So there's no right or wrong, good or bad.
Brain states aren't merely a product.
Wait,
of
but you said
evolution.
you agree with morality.
Okay, no, okay. Brain states are the what we would call the product of an evolutionary descent, followed by what we call stimulus and response and or operant conditioning. So what I don't understand is why you're making any valuation at all about the rich and the poor, because you see, that's a fundamentally religious concept about that we should help the poor. But you're not religious. You're coming from a secular point of view. Where do you get these value judgments from?
I'm talking about an
Okay.
economic efficient point of view.
Right, but that's still a value. Listen, that's still a value judgment. If you're talking about economic efficiency in terms of pragmatism, that means that things work in a certain way best and things work in a certain way for the worst. That's still a value judgment, sir. And so your valuation of certain states of affairs, as opposed to other states of affairs, such as what works best for the poor or what does not work best, is simply the way that your neurological states have evolved. And if I disagree with you, and I don't hold to evolution, but if I disagree with you, I evolved to think differently. And neither one of us are right or wrong, good or bad.
It's based on experience as well. It's not purely genetically.
Okay, did you hear me comment on that? Evolution also entails for what we would call stimulus and response. I have animals, sir. I have a dog, and the dog is the product of its so-called evolutionary descent and its stimulus and response.
Well, the genetics that you select for when you breed the dog artificially.
Oh, okay. So
still
do you hold that it's genetic, sir?
That what is genetic?
That genetics exist.
Yeah, genetics exist.
Good. Are there laws of biology?
I don't know what you mean by laws of biology.
Well, if there aren't laws of biology, what would genetics mean?
Well, what are you referring to by laws of biology?
Genetics means that certain biological states and reproduction, including the conveyance of genetic information, reproduces in some regular or law-like ways. Do you believe that genetics is the product of biological laws?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Good.
how do you?
Good. Now, do you believe there are other laws?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you know that?
Well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about how I know that, or are we talking about genetics influencing social behaviors?
How do you know that nature operates according to any laws?
Okay, well, that's not what we're talking about, are we?
Yeah, it is what we're talking about because we're talking about evolution, and I'm simply now
we were talking about school, and then we were talking about biology and genetics.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's
now
right.
you're
and,
trying
right,
to
and I'm simply showing him that his underlying metaphysic of evolution is inconsistent with his insisting on that value judgments are substantive. But now, since you're advocating an evolutionary descent by genetics, I want to see if, since you hold to genetics, that it holds water. Can your advocacy of genetics hold water, sir?
Well, with respect to certain goals, aims, or desires, value judgments can definitely be relevant and objective.
Okay, can your worldview hold water with regards to the existence of genetics? Are there biological laws that we refer to called genetics?
Okay, are we doing an internal critique of my worldview?
Sir, I'm asking you a question.
I just want to make sure, because if we're doing an internal critique, then there's certain things that I get to have.
Okay, notice what he's doing now. He's doing semi-evasiveness. So I asked you a question. You'll either answer the question or you'll evade it. Now, are there biological laws?
Yeah, I agreed to that.
Okay, how do you know it?
Well, based on the presuppositions of my worldview.
Okay, now, are those presuppositions arbitrary?
No, they're necessary.
How do you know that?
Well, I know that because I know myself. No, sir.
Okay, you see, Chum, you're familiar with me and I'm familiar with you. If you think that you're going to be evasive by using trickery words, it's not going to happen,
you direct
sir.
Answers.
No, I know, but you see, your presupposition is it an arbitrary starting point, or is there a justification?
Necessary.
How is it necessary?
Tell
me what the bottom basic starting point is that secures that there are laws. What is that?
Reality.
What is that?
You want me to define reality?
Right. How do you? Okay. When you say you know that nature operates according to laws, well, you presuppose it. In virtue of what do you presuppose it? Because you imagine it, or is it because of your sense perception? Is your invocation that there are laws the product of your imagination, or is it the product of your sense perception?
Okay, so you're asking me to justify my presuppositions and my starting point, but that's an
Okay,
incoherent question.
sir, you're okay. As usual, you're being deceptive and evasive.
Look, you
Listen
asked me a
carefully.
loaded question.
Listen
and I
carefully.
unloaded
No, it wasn't a loaded question, sir. Because what's a loaded question? Can you tell me what that is, real quick? What's a loaded
A
question?
loaded question is when there's a presupposition built into the question, which implies that I have to answer a certain way.
Okay, no, there is an either an overt or a covert premise that would otherwise be
Yeah,
objectionable.
presupposition. Yeah.
Good. What is the premise that is otherwise objectionable to you when I ask you your assertion that nature operates according to laws? Is it in virtue of your imagination,
Right.
or in
So
virtue? Hold on a second. I'm not done yet.
sure.
You
Yeah,
see,
go ahead.
because your deceptive tactics, they're not going to work with me
Go
because
ahead. No, go ahead.
I'll smoke you out. So when you say it's a loaded question, and I ask you, how do you actually account in terms of the nitty-gritty for that there are laws? Is it in virtue of your imagination that you call your presupposition, or in virtue of your sense perception? So what's the hidden premise that is otherwise objectionable?
Yeah, so the covert premise there is that well, first of all, that there could be accounts for these things, and second of all, you're asking an externalist justification of
is your
my
position?
internalist view.
Oh,
so I can give you an
so you object that the laws of nature can be accounted for?
I said it's possible that it's an
No, I'm
incoherent
asking you.
question. So that's the assumption in your
Well, it's
question.
not a matter of whether it's possible. The question is, you account for the laws of nature. Now, here's the question: do you account for the laws of nature because you imagine or think that nature operates according to laws?
Well, I don't know that I need to account for them. I assume.
Sir, okay, you're being deceptive again, as usual. Okay,
Not
do you think
deceptive.
listen,
I'm
Chum,
answering
listen,
straightforwardly.
Chum, you know that I know you. I've dealt
Sure.
with you before. You know that I know your little bag of tricks. Now, I asked you a question.
Little bag of tricks.
Yeah, I
however
know.
you're calling it.
Yeah, because I've talked with you many times, Chum.
We've talked like twice.
Right,
So
right. No, actually more than that. So, Chum, now I ask you again, does nature operate according to laws because you imagine it?
well, it sounds like you're trying to ask, or you're trying to get me to justify my presuppositions.
Okay, you're being evasive again, Chum.
Nature hold on, I'm answering you. So nature acting according to some laws is one of my presuppositions. So you're asking me to account for my presupposition, and that's the part of the question that makes it loaded.
Okay, listen, dude, I'm getting really pissed off, and when I get
Good.
pissed off, I get an itchy trigger finger. Now,
Fine.
do you account that nature operates according to some laws because you imagine it?
So that's a loaded question.
Okay, dude, last chance. Okay, if you're going to be a little devious, little deceptive, little twitch,
I assume
you're
that
going to get
nature
server muted.
operates
Do
according
you-
to some
do you-
laws.
Do you account that nature operates according to some laws because you imagine it?
I assume that nature operates according to some laws.
Is that a yes, sir?
And asking me to justify
Is
my
that okay?
my
Okay,
presuppositions
listen.
is a
I'm
false,
going to-
incoherent
okay.
question.
Now, you're going to get server muted permanently if you don't stop with your nomenclature dropping. Speak basic English so people can understand you. Either you
Can't you understand
account for the laws of no, I can understand you, but you see, you're trying to use
Then
semantics
what's the
to
problem?
be evasive. Okay, listen, you don't understand something. I just warned you. You're about to be permanently server muted in
Great.
here. Good. Now, do you either you account for the laws of nature in virtue of your imagination or not? Which is it?
It's a false. Okay. Not.
Good. Then if it's not the product simply of what you think or imagine, how then do you account, apart from your thinking and imagination, that nature operates according to some laws? And if you say by your presuppositions, I will server mute you.
Well, you're assuming that I'm accounting for it. My view is that there can't be an account for it.
Okay, so you don't have. Okay, so
I assume it.
Okay, right.
I've
so
said
so
this.
okay, good. So you are asserting that there's a state of affairs for which you have no rational justification.
I don't believe there can be rational justification.
I didn't
for
ask
my
you that.
assumptions.
I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you if you
Well, I
believe
know
there
you
could
didn't,
be.
but I'm outlining
Now,
my view.
okay, good. So the fact of the matter is, everything that you say about genetics is predicated on a belief statement for which you have no rational justification.
Correct.
So
I don't believe there can be.
good. So when you say genetics is actual, you have conceded you don't have a justification for that.
Well, I do have a justification in
If you
virtue
say
of my assumptions.
no, that's not a justification, sir. That's
Or
just
do you not wait? Hold on. Are you telling me that I can't use the word presuppositions in a conversations about epistemology?
No. What I'm saying to you
That's
is
tying my hands behind my back and
no.
asking me to fight.
Listen to me. Continue. You see, you are so close to being server muted. It isn't even funny,
Look,
and you're pissing me off.
I get
Okay,
that
now
you
listen.
don't like me.
Don't ever talk.
That's
No,
fine.
what I don't. No, it has nothing to do that I don't like you. What I don't like is your deceptive practices. Now, you can sit there and go, "Oh, by my presuppositions." Now, yeah, I understand that you have a starting presupposition. How is that presupposition arrived at, sir?
I assume it.
So in other words, you imagine it.
Imagine is different from assume.
No, how so, sir?
Imagine would mean that I think it up, not that I start with it.
Right. Okay. You see,
That's what makes it necessary.
Okay. What you just did is a distinction with no difference. It's not necessary because you assume it.
Well, necessary means that there's no alternative. If there's an alternative to
sir,
assuming these things, then I'd like to hear it.
No. Necessary means it cannot be otherwise. It doesn't mean that there's no alternative.
No,
okay. Okay. You are such an effing bullshitter.
If
okay.
there's one
Necessary means it cannot be otherwise. It doesn't mean there's no alternative. All you're simply saying is I don't know of another alternative. But that doesn't necessarily make that your starting point, okay, is the case. So basically, your invocation of genetics is that there are laws of nature, and your invocation that there are laws of nature is because you assume and imagine it. Now, when you say, oh, no, it's because it's necessary because there's no alternative, how do you know there's no alternative?
Necessary just means logically unavoidable.
Sir, when you say there's no other alternative other than assuming the laws of nature, do you know what that necessarily follows from that?
What's that?
The falsity of the Christian God. Now, is the Christian God false?
I don't think that follows necessarily.
Oh, okay. It doesn't necessarily. No, it necessarily follows because. All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay.
Whoa, powerful.
His penis is probably small.
No, but I think using evolution as the basis of your worldview, it does not leave room for a justified economic system that helps people.
Evolution
I like
isn't
the
basis
part
from our worldview. It's one of the conclusions drawn from a line of inferences within my worldview.
I know,
really
but
like the part where he threatened you.
But I think I'm just gonna leave because it sounds like he really wants to like perma-mute me, and I'm interested in continuing to converse with him in the future. So I'm just gonna bow out here.
Yeah.
Auf Wiedersehen.